Welcome back to the deep dive. Today, we're jumping into something, well, pretty fascinating and honestly, a trend that's kind of surprising on the global scene. Usually, when you think about people relocating internationally, you picture Europe, maybe Latin America, right? Following those sort of traditional paths. But the research we've dug into points somewhere else entirely, and it seems to be speeding up. Black Americans increasingly looking towards Asia for a new start, like really building a different kind of life there. So, our mission today is to unpack this. We're going beyond just stories and looking at the actual research, what's driving this, what's the environment like when they arrive, and crucially, what about the communities they're building, thousands of miles away?
Yeah, and it's really important to understand upfront, this isn't just about taking a long vacation or a gap year. What our analysis is showing is that this is often a very deliberate long-term move, and it seems to be driven by a core set of factors. Better financial prospects, a genuinely higher quality of life,
Right.
and maybe the most powerful driver, finding a place that feels more welcoming than what they experienced back in the U.S. They're sort of actively reshaping what home and belonging mean, but on a global stage.
Okay, let's dig into that, starting with the practical side, the money. Asia as a magnet makes sense intuitively, but can we pin down the economic draw more specifically? What's the main financial pull that makes someone take such a huge step?
Right. We need to get past just saying, oh, it's cheaper. Because the sources we looked at consistently show the financial difference isn't just marginal, it's transformative for many.
Mm.
The real metric here is purchasing power, what your money actually buys you. So, for instance, you see these comparisons popping up all the time. Take a remote worker's budget, maybe something like, say, $3,000 a month. In a big U.S. city, that covers your basics, right? Rent, utilities, maybe some groceries. It's tight.
Yeah, barely scraping by in some places.
Exactly. But then you look at somewhere like Hanoi in Vietnam or Chiang Mai in Thailand. That same 3 grand, people describe it as enabling a genuine luxury lifestyle. We're talking modern, high-spec apartments, eating out whenever you want, quick weekend trips within the country or even nearby countries. It's kind of financial ease and comfort that's just, well, it's out of reach for many with that same budget stateside.
That's a massive difference. So it's not just about like saving a bit of cash. It's a fundamental upgrade to your lifestyle, purely based on financial efficiency. What does that affordability actually let people do? Is it all about retiring early, or is it more about professional freedom, maybe?
It fuels a whole range of motivations, really. You did definitely have people seeking that freedom to explore a different pace of life. But for lots of others, it's driven by wanting professional or financial growth that they felt maybe wasn't accessible or was harder to achieve in the U.S. The sources specifically mention former educators quite a bit. That demographic seems prominent.
Oh, interesting. Why educators specifically?
Well, think about it. They might be leaving environments that are high stress, sometimes politically charged, maybe not the best paid,
Right.
and they're finding stable, respected teaching jobs in Asia, international schools, English language programs. For them, it's often a direct step up in both quality of life and how they feel valued professionally. And then you've got consultants, entrepreneurs. The low overheads mean starting or growing a business is just so much more feasible. The financial barrier to entry is lower.
And beyond the money, the sources also mention this idea of geographic freedom, right? Being based in Asia puts you like right in the middle of everything. Hopping over to Singapore or Bali is suddenly cheaper than flying coast to coast in the US.
Exactly, that ease of travel is a huge bonus.
I also saw mentions that for some, there's a deeper layer, maybe exploring potential family connections or roots in the region. So the move becomes this kind of personal history project, too.
Yeah, that element is definitely there for some individuals.
Okay, but here's where, for me, it gets really fascinating. Money and cheap flights are great, but moving across the world into a totally different culture that takes more than just a good bank balance. You need to feel, socially comfortable, accepted. And the research consistently uses this phrase, Asia, as a surprisingly welcoming continent. Let's unpack that. What's the real difference between dealing with, say, cultural curiosity, people staring or asking questions, versus what the sources call systematic inequalities?
That distinction seems absolutely crucial. It comes up again and again as maybe the biggest non-economic reason people stay. Cultural curiosity, the way expats describe it, is often things like, yeah, stares, maybe awkward questions about hair or skin color. It can be uncomfortable, sure. It happens when you look different. But it's usually described as sort of surface level,
Yeah.
benign, maybe even transactional. It doesn't usually stop you from doing things.
Okay, so annoying but manageable.
Right.
Yeah.
Whereas systematic inequality, that's structural. That's about facing hurdles in getting a job, finding housing, how you're treated by authorities, trying to get funding for a business. It's these built-in disadvantages that can affect your whole life, no matter how successful you are personally.
Mm-hmm.
And what many Black expats report is that while, yes, they absolutely encounter curiosity in Asia, sometimes a lot of it they experience far, far less of that deep-seated structural disadvantage that they felt was part of daily life in the United States.
Wow, that's a fundamental shift in your day-to-day reality, moving from feeling like you're constantly battling the system to just navigating cultural nuances.
Precisely.
And that brings us right to community, doesn't it? Because making that transition, setting up a life, especially a professional one long term, you need support. The sources talk about these thriving Black expat and digital nomad communities popping up in several key countries in Asia. It's not just isolated individuals, they're actively connecting, building networks. Bangkok, Thailand gets mentioned a lot as a prime example, like a real hub.
Oh, absolutely. These networks aren't just nice-to-haves. These seem to function as essential infrastructure, especially for people making serious, long-term professional moves. And what we're talking about more than just, grabbing drinks after work. These are practical support systems.
Like what kind of practical support?
Well, think about it. If you're an entrepreneur setting up shop, or maybe a consultant on an extended contract, needing a place for 6 months or a year, these communities are often the first place you go for real-world advice. Things like navigating visa requirements, finding trustworthy long-term housing, good serviced apartments, maybe even serviced offices if you're setting up a small team. The kind of reliable places professionals need. They also help with understanding local business norms, all that tricky stuff.
Ah, okay. So they act like a shared knowledge base, helping people figure out the complexities of actually living and working there long term, not just visiting.
Exactly. They provide that grounding, that practical help that turns a potentially overwhelming move into something manageable, something sustainable. It helps build that feeling of having a real home base.
You need that stability, especially if you're trying to build a career or a business far from home. Okay, let's shift gears slightly to the where and the what. Where exactly are people choosing to go, and what kind of work are they doing to sustain this lifestyle and, make the most of that improved quality of life we talked about?
The sources paint a pretty diverse picture. Thailand, especially Bangkok, definitely seems like a major anchor point. But you also see significant communities in India, Singapore, Vietnam,
Mm-hmm.
and then other places are mentioned too, like South Korea, China, even Indonesia, particularly Bali, it seems.
Thailand's popularity isn't really a mystery when you look at it. That welcoming land of smiles reputation certainly helps, plus the incredible affordability we already discussed.
Mhm.
But there's a technical piece that's really key for long-term stays.
Visas. Specifically, the availability of practical immigration options like digital nomad visas or other long-term residency paths. For anyone listening who isn't familiar, these aren't just glorified tourist visas. They're often specific government programs designed to attract remote workers or professionals. They provide a clear, legal way to stay for a year, maybe two, sometimes longer, often renewable, as long as you can show you have income from outside the country.
Right, that provides crucial stability.
It's huge. It makes Thailand and increasingly other countries offering similar visas a viable place to build a life, not just pass through for a few months.
That makes sense. Being able to stay legally and securely changes everything. Now, looking at the list, India is an interesting one. It doesn't always pop up in the typical digital nomad hotspots conversation. What's the draw there for Black American expats, according to the sources?
Yet, India seems different. The pull there appears overwhelmingly professional, often centered around the big IT and corporate consulting industries. So you're looking at more high-level corporate roles, people moving specifically for management positions or bringing technical expertise. It's less about the low cost of living, though that can still be a factor outside the major hubs, and more about specific career opportunities.
And Singapore. That's known for being expensive.
Very expensive, yes. But the draw there is pure opportunity. Extremely high salaries, incredible infrastructure, a major global business hub. Even with the high cost, the potential for top-tier professional advancement makes it attractive for certain career tracks. It's unmatched in the region for certain industries.
Got it. So different places attract people for slightly different reasons within this broader trend. And what about the actual work people are doing across these different countries? We mentioned teaching English seems like a common entry point.
It often is, yeah. It's an accessible way in for many.
But it sounds like the momentum is shifting towards roles with more autonomy. Entrepreneurship, consulting. Are people successfully starting businesses? Are there big hurdles?
There are definitely hurdles. Navigating local bureaucracy, setting up legal structures in a different culture, those challenges are real and mentioned frequently. It's not always straightforward. But the sources suggest that for many, the upsides, the financial freedom, the lower operational costs outweigh those complexities. Think about it. Hiring staff costs less. Office space costs less. An idea that might barely survive its first year in the U.S. might have a much better chance, longer runway, in somewhere like Vietnam or Thailand because the burn rate is so much lower.
So the environment itself provides a bit of a cushion for entrepreneurs.
In many ways, yes, but it's important, and the sources are clear on this, to keep a balanced perspective. It's not a utopia. Challenges absolutely exist. You've got the deep cultural differences to navigate daily. And maybe one of the toughest parts mentioned is maintaining those long-distance relationships with family and friends back home. That emotional distance, the time zones, that's hard. You don't just erase that by moving.
Of course, that makes sense. It's still real life with real challenges. But despite those challenges, the overall feeling seems incredibly positive.
Overwhelmingly so, yes. The consistent theme reported by these expats is one of a dramatically improved quality of life. Significant personal growth from just immersing yourself in a totally different environment. And for many, genuinely finding a place that feels like a fulfilling home, away from their original home. The difficulties are seen as manageable trade-offs for gaining that sense of belonging and, often, that economic autonomy they were seeking.
So bringing this all together, what's the big takeaway here? Our deep dive seems to show that this growing movement of Black Americans to Asia isn't really about running away from the U.S., is it? It feels more like an active, intentional search, like actively seeking out and building a higher quality of life, finding a stronger sense of belonging, both in terms of money and just feeling comfortable socially, choosing environments where they perceive greater fairness and opportunity.
I think that's exactly right. And the success and growth of these communities,
Yeah.
from the big established networks in Bangkok to these emerging professional groups in places like Seoul or even Bangalore, it really highlights how powerful finding or creating strong support networks can be, especially when you're pursuing ambitious global goals, professionally or personally. It kind of proves that if you can tap into or help build that infrastructure, finding those trusted resources for everything from visa help to reliable long-term service apartments or offices, you really can build stability and success almost anywhere.
Yeah, that community aspect feels absolutely key. Which leads us to a final thought, something for you, our listeners, to chew on. Given this clear desire we're seeing for a better quality of life, for freedom from those systemic issues, how might this growing trend, this outward flow, and the building of these strong communities abroad fundamentally change the relationship long term between the U.S. diaspora and the lives and communities they're investing in across Asia? It feels like a really dynamic global shift, and honestly, probably one that's only going to pick up speed.